In the 19th century, during the Great Fossil Rush in the American West, paleontologists were scrambling to outdo one another, racing to publish new species and cement their names in history. In their rush, accuracy was sacrificed for speed, and giants were built from fragments. When massive bones were uncovered, femurs the size of a man, vertebrae as wide as barrels, scientists knew they had found something extraordinary. But what was it? With only partial skeletons in their possession, they guessed, and their guesses would define the image of dinosaurs for generations. One of the earliest and most famous examples was the mighty Brontosaurus, discovered by Othniel Charles Marsh in 1879. Marsh found an enormous skeleton, but it was incomplete. The skull was missing. Rather than admit uncertainty, Marsh reconstructed it with whatever bones he had on hand, even borrowing from other animals. He placed the wrong skull on the skeleton, creating a giant with the wrong head. For decades, Brontosaurus stood in museums as a colossal mistake, an animal that never actually existed in that form. It was only later revealed to be a Apatosaurus, and the skull it wore belonged to an entirely different dinosaur. The thunder lizard that filled the imaginations of millions was a misassembled puzzle. A prehistoric giant completely wrong, but the mistakes did not end with Brontosaurus. The way scientists imagined all sauropods, the long-necked giants of the Jurassic, was flawed for decades. They were pictured as swamp dwellers, too heavy to survive on land, their bodies sinking under their own weight. Artists drew them with their necks raised like giraffes, their tails dragging uselessly through mud, their sluggish bodies half submerged in water. Diplodocus, Brachiosaurus, Apatosaurus, all the titans of the Jurassic were confined to swamps in the public imagination. Museums built dioramas of them standing knee-deep in water, as though the land itself could not hold them. But this was not true. Later studies showed that their legs were powerful columns, perfectly capable of carrying their weight on land. Their lungs and bones revealed adaptations for a fully terrestrial lifestyle. Their tails were not useless appendages, but finely tuned counterbalances and even potential weapons capable of being whipped with explosive force. The swamp-dwelling giants of early reconstructions were, in reality, land-dominating animals that thrived across vast plains and forests. The prehistoric giants science had given us were not real. They were slow, awkward shadows, born of guesswork and limited imagination. Another mistake lay in their posture. For much of the 20th century, sauropods were shown with their necks held high, arching into the sky like massive giraffes. Brachiosaurus, in particular, was imagined standing upright, towering above the treetops, its head surveying the land from impossible heights. This image was so popular it appeared in films, documentaries, and endless artwork, but recent research suggests their necks were held more horizontally, sweeping side to side rather than stretching endlessly upward. Their feeding strategies were likely very different from what we imagined. The giants that once gazed above the forests in our books may never have looked like that at all. These errors were not just about bones, they were about ideas. In the 19th century, dinosaurs were imagined as slow, lumbering reptiles, evolutionary failures that were destined to go extinct. The prehistoric giants were painted as bloated mistakes, dragging their tails and collapsing under their own weight. The very word dinosaur became a metaphor for failure, for something outdated and doomed. For generations, children were taught that these giants were clumsy, stupid, and weak. And yet, as new discoveries came, the truth revealed itself to be the opposite. Dinosaurs were among the most successful creatures to ever walk the earth, thriving for over 160 million years. Their giants were not failures, they were masterpieces of evolution. The most haunting thing about these mistakes is how long they lasted. For decades, textbooks, museums, and films repeated the wrong images. Even after scientists corrected the errors, the public imagination clung to the old giants. The Brontosaurus, long declared invalid, still appeared in books and films. Swamp-dwelling sauropods continued to populate illustrations. The prehistoric giants we thought we knew refused to die, haunting our culture like ghosts. And yet, there is something almost poetic in this. The mistakes themselves became part of history. The wrong Brontosaurus, the swamp-bound Diplodocus, The towering Brachiosaurus, they may have been incorrect, but they still inspired millions. They brought dinosaurs to life for generations, sparking curiosity and wonder. They were wrong, but in being wrong, they opened the door to deeper truths. So when we say science got this prehistoric giant completely wrong, we are not just talking about a single skeleton or a single name. We are talking about an entire vision of the past, built on incomplete evidence, shaped by human pride, and held together by imagination. The giants of our childhood, the ones in books, in statues, in films, were never real. They were shadows born from error. And yet, they mattered. But perhaps the most fascinating part of this story is not how science got them wrong, it is how science slowly got them right, through patience, evidence, and relentless correction. The giants were rebuilt, their posture was corrected, their lifestyle reimagined, their skeletons reassembled. The thunder lizards of the past may have been myths, but from those myths, the truth emerged. And in part 2, we'll explore how the corrections changed everything, how new discoveries reshaped the giants we thought we knew, and how the real prehistoric titans turned out to be even stranger, even more powerful, and even more inspiring than the mistakes that once defined them. The giants of the prehistoric world had been misunderstood for decades, their bodies reconstructed in ways that made them slower, weaker, and stranger than they truly were. But once the old mistakes began to fall away, a new image emerged, one that revealed just how extraordinary these creatures really were. Science may have gotten them wrong at first, but in correcting itself, it uncovered something even more astonishing. The truth was far more incredible than the myth. Take Diplodocus, once imagined as a swamp-bound lizard dragging its tail through the mud. When paleontologists revisited its skeleton with modern techniques, they discovered its tail was a finely balanced weapon, capable of cracking like a whip at the speed of sound. Instead of a clumsy reptile, Diplodocus was revealed as a powerful land animal, using its massive frame not to struggle, but to dominate. The swamp giant we once pictured as half-drowned was, in reality, a creature so perfectly adapted that it survived for millions of years unchanged. The prehistoric giant was not weak, it was an evolutionary triumph. Brachiosaurus, too, was misunderstood. The towering dinosaur had long been shown in museums with its neck raised high above the trees, an image that became iconic in books and films. But new studies of its vertebrae showed that such an upright posture would have been nearly impossible. Its heart would have struggled to pump blood to a head so far above its body. Instead, the real Brachiosaurus likely held its neck more forward, sweeping across forests and plains to graze efficiently, feeding on a wide range of plants. This was not a giraffe-like browser stretching endlessly upward, but a more versatile giant, able to cover vast ground in search of food. And in that flexibility lay its success. Even Apatosaurus, once confused with Brontosaurus, turned out to be stranger than we ever imagined. Its massive neck, once thought to be rigid and heavy, showed signs of flexibility that suggested it could swing side to side, sweeping across the ground like a living crane. Its thick tail, misinterpreted as a useless appendage, may have been used as a thunderous weapon against predators. The same creature science once reduced to a sluggish swamp dweller was, in truth, a dynamic and powerful animal, one that inspired awe in predators and prey alike. And then there was Spinosaurus, the most dramatic example of how wrong science can be, and how quickly the story can change. For decades, Spinosaurus was reconstructed as a giant land predator, a cousin of Tyrannosaurus rex with a mysterious sail on its back. In films and books, it was shown battling other dinosaurs, a land-based killer with an unforgettable silhouette. But the truth was stranger. New fossils suggested Spinosaurus was semi-aquatic, its body built for swimming, its long jaws snapping fish like a crocodile. Its sail may have been used for display or thermoregulation, a bizarre adaptation unlike anything else. The mighty land predator we thought we knew turned out to be a river monster, a prehistoric giant that blurred the line between land and water. Each correction peeled away another layer of myth, replacing it with evidence. Dinosaurs were no longer sluggish reptiles, they were dynamic, social, and often bird-like. They were not evolutionary failures, but survivors that ruled the Earth for over 160 million years. And they were not all scaly, dull-colored beasts. Many were feathered, brightly colored, and intelligent. Velociraptors, once imagined as human-sized monsters, were revealed to be turkey-sized. Feathered predators with a deadly grace, the giants of the past, once mocked as mistakes, were being reshaped into creatures more fascinating than any artist could have invented. But the story of mistakes did not end with dinosaurs. Other prehistoric giants were also misunderstood. Mastodons and mammoths, when first discovered, were believed to be savage carnivores, their tusks imagined as weapons for slashing prey. Only later did science recognize them as gentle plant eaters, closer to modern elephants than monsters. Glyptodon, the armored giant of South America, was first thought to be an enormous turtle, its fossil shell mistaken for a carapace. Only later did scientists realize it was a massive armadillo, with a tail club strong enough to crush bones. Even the great megalodon, the giant shark of ancient oceans, was for decades exaggerated into a monster larger than any evidence could support. Its true size is still debated today, reminding us that even modern science can overreach. All of these errors share one truth: they were born from fragments. Fossils are never complete. They are scattered pieces of a puzzle that time has shattered. To rebuild a creature from them requires imagination, and imagination always risks going too far. The swamp-dwelling sauropod, the horned iguanodon, the land predator Spinosaurus, all were visions created to fill gaps in knowledge. They were wrong, but they were necessary. Without those guesses, science would never have moved forward. Each mistake forced paleontologists to ask new questions, to look again, to search deeper. And from those questions came discovery. What makes the story of these giants so haunting is how much they reveal about us. We want certainty. We want to see the whole picture. We cannot stand to leave the past unfinished. And so we fill the gaps, sometimes with brilliance, sometimes with error. The prehistoric giants are as much a product of our imagination as they are of stone and bone. The brontosaurus that never existed, the swamp giants that never struggled, the Spinosaurus that changed shape before our eyes, they are mirrors of human curiosity, ambition, and pride. And yet, there is a strange beauty in being wrong. Because each era captured imaginations, inspired children, and filled museums with wonder. The giants may have been misdrawn, but they brought the past to life. They made people ask questions, dream of lost worlds, and look at fossils with awe. Even the mistakes became legends, shaping culture as much as science. The brontosaurus that didn't exist still appeared in films. The swamp giants still walked across paintings. The myths became as real as the creatures themselves, alive in the minds of millions. Today, science is better equipped. CT scans, 3D modeling, and microscopic analysis of fossilized skin and feathers give us details unimaginable to 19th century paleontologists. We can peer into skull cavities to study brains, measure muscle attachments to reconstruct movement, and even glimpse colors preserved in tiny fossilized pigments. And yet, we must remember certainty is an illusion. What we believe today may be the myths of tomorrow. Just as the swamp-dwelling giants gave way to the land titans we know now, our own reconstructions may one day be overturned. The prehistoric giants are not fixed, they are stories still being written. So when we say science got this prehistoric giant completely wrong, we are not just pointing to old errors. We are acknowledging the truth about science itself. It is a process, not a destination. It moves forward by being wrong, by correcting itself, by replacing myths with evidence. And in that process, it creates legends, inspires imaginations, and brings the dead back to life in ways both flawed and beautiful. Perhaps that is why these mistakes endure. Because even when wrong, the giants still walked. They lived in our books, our films, our museums. They became part of culture, as real in our minds as they were in stone. And in that sense, the swamp-bound diplodocus, the horned iguanodon, the invented brontosaurus, they will never truly vanish. They are as immortal as the truth itself, living not in fossils, but in us, and that is the final lesson. The prehistoric giants may have been misunderstood, but their story is not just about bones. It is about the human need to see the past, to imagine it, to make it real even when we get it completely wrong.